Hi, everyone. So this is for my drugs and behavior class. I did an outline for chapter 9, which is talking about alcohol for pages 182 to 186. So starting off with alcoholic beverages, we're talking about fermentation. Fermentation forms the basis for all alcoholic beverages. Certain yeasts act on sugar in the presence of water, and this chemical action is fermentation. Yeast recombines the carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen of sugar into alcohol and carbon dioxide. Most fruits, including grapes, contain sugar, and the addition of the appropriate yeast to a mixture of crushed grapes and water will begin the fermentation process. The yeast has only a limited tolerance for alcohol. When the concentration reaches 15%, the yeast dies and the fermentation ceases. While up to 15% is theoretically possible, in practice, the standard alcohol content for wine is about 12%. So moving on for talking about making malt. Um, Cereal grains can also be used to produce alcoholic beverages. However, cereal grains contain starch rather than sugar. And begin the starch must be converted to sugar. This accomplished by making malt, which contains enzymes that convert starch into sugar. Moving on to distilled products. To obtain alcohol concentrations above 15%, distillation is necessary. Distillation is a process in which the solution containing alcohol is heated and the vapors are collected and condensed into liquid form again. Alcohol has a lower boiling point than water, so there is a higher percentage of alcohol in the distillate than there was in the original solution. There is still debate over who discovered the distillation process and when the discovery was made, but many authorities place it in Arabia around 800 AD. The term alcohol comes from an Arabic word meaning finely divided spirits, which I highlighted, of course, in this outline. Um, but in the United States, the alcoholic content of distilled beverages is indicated by the term proof. So I defined proof as a measure of a beverage's alcohol content twice the alcohol percentage. The percentage of alcohol by volume is one half of the proof number. For instance, 90 proof whiskey is 45% alcohol. The word proof developed from a British Army procedure to gauge the alcohol content of distilled spirits before there were modern techniques. That was proof that the beverage had an acceptable alcohol content, about 57%. Typical distilled beverages sold commercially range between 40% and 50% alcohol content. So from distilled products, we're talking about beer, and beer is made by adding barley malt to another cereal grain, such as ground corn or rice. The enzymes in the malt change the starches in these grains into sugar. Then the solids are filtered out before the yeast is added to the mash to start fermentation. Um, then I got into hops. So hops, which is dried blossoms from only the female hop plant, are added with the yeast to give beer its distinctive pungent flavor. Although there are many varieties of beer, they fall into two broad types, ale and lager. Most of the beer sold today in America is lager, from the German word lagern, meaning to store. Ale is made using a top fermenting yeast and slightly warmer temperatures, and the shorter fermentation time results in more of the flavor of the malt being retained in the final product. In general, ales have a stronger taste and lagers have the lighter taste, favored by most American beer drinkers. Um, in this section, we also talk about how beer is sold in bottles or cans. And because of this, the yeast must be removed to prevent it from spoiling after packaging. This is usually accomplished by heating it, also called pasteurization. Um, But then I got into how 2 years after the prohibition ended, there were 750 US brewers, but by 1941, the number had dwindled to 507. As I stated here, US brewing picture has changed dramatically since 1960, and in the 60s and 70s, there saw a rapid disappearance of many local or regional breweries and increasing dominance by a smaller number of national brands. Beginning in 1980s, the small craft breweries began to appear, followed later by the appearance of microbreweries and brew pubs, which was making the beer for sale only on the premises, and the total number of these places are now well over 14,500. Imported beers have become increasingly popular also in the last 20 years. Within the beginning of this chapter, they also get into talking about wine. Wine is one of humankind's oldest beverages, a drink that for generations has been praised as a gift from heaven and condemned as a work of the devil. Although a large number of wine is now produced in mechanized, sterilized wine factories, many small wineries operate alongside the industry. And the tradition continues that careful selections of cultivation of grapevines, good weather, precise timing of the harvest, and careful monitoring of fermentation and aging can result in wines of noticeably higher quality. I noted that there are two types of American wines, one being generics that are they are usually have names taken from European land areas where the original wines were produced, aka Chablis, Burgundy, and Rhine. Um, all the blended wines made from the grapes that are available. The second the second one that I noted is varietals. They are named after one variety of grape, which by law must make up at least 51% of the grapes used in producing the wine, such as Chardonnay, Merlot, and Zinfandel. Are good examples. And then aside from generics versus varietals and whites versus red, there's also dry versus sweet wines. So that ends my outline for this chapter. And I hope that was helpful to everyone.